More than 1 in 4 Americans over 65 will fall this year. Most of them will blame their age. But age isn't what's taking their legs. It's something almost nobody told them to eat. And here's the part that worries me. The weakness starts years before that first fall, quietly, while every blood test still comes back normal. Stay with me. I'm going to show you the foods that rebuild leg strength in the order that actually matters, and a 10-second test you can do in your own kitchen right now to see exactly where your legs stand today. I've spent years working the night shift in an emergency room, and if you want to know what scares me more than almost anything that comes through those doors, it isn't the dramatic stuff. It's the quiet arrival at 2 in the morning. An older man or woman on a stretcher, a hip fractured from a fall in their own hallway, and a family standing there asking the same question every time. How did this happen so fast? And the honest answer, the one there's never time to give in that hallway, is that it didn't happen fast at all. It had been building for 10 years. They just couldn't see it. So let me say plainly what most doctors won't take the time to say. Your legs getting weaker as you get older is not a sentence you have to accept. It is not simply the price of another birthday. A very large part of it is about what you are and are not giving your muscles to work with. One of those is a life sentence you serve quietly. The other is a problem you can start solving with your next meal. Those are not the same thing, and for the next half hour, I'm going to treat them as what they are. Completely different. Here's a number that stopped me the first time I really sat with it. According to the CDC, more than 1 in 4 adults over 65 falls every single year. That's about 3 million emergency room visits and roughly 1 million hospital stays year after year from falling down. And this is the part almost nobody hears. Fewer than half of the people who fall ever tell their doctor about it. They're embarrassed. They think it was a fluke. So the single clearest warning the body gives, I stumbled, I went down, gets buried, and everyone waits for the next one. The next one is often the hip. Now, I don't tell you that to frighten you. I tell you it because the weakness underneath that number is one of the most reversible things I know of in medicine, at almost any age. And the people who do best are almost always the ones who caught it earlier. So let's catch it earlier. Most channels that make a video like this will save the single most important food for the very end. They dangle it, they tease it, they make you sit through everything else first. I'm going to do the exact opposite. I'm going to give you the most powerful one right now in the first few minutes, and I'll tell you exactly why. The people who need this most, the ones already feeling it in the stairs, already gripping the railing, are exactly the ones who won't sit through a long countdown. If you click away in 5 minutes, I want you to leave with the one that matters most already in your hands. So we're going to start at number 1 and work outward. But before I name it, I have to give you the frame, because a food without the reason is just a grocery item. You'll forget it by tomorrow. Understand the reason, and you'll never forget the food. There are really 4 things that aging does to your legs. Just 4. Everything on this list is a tool against one or more of them. The first is that your muscles slowly stop listening. There's a term for it, anabolic resistance. And it sounds complicated, but the picture is simple. When you're young, protein knocks on the muscle's door and the muscle opens it immediately and starts building. As you age, the muscle still hears the knock. It just doesn't answer the way it used to. You have to knock louder to get the same result. Hold on to that image because it changes how you eat. The second thing is a slow fire. Doctors call it chronic low-grade inflammation, and the everyday version is this. After about 60, your body runs a small background fire it never fully puts out. You can't feel it as heat, but over years it chars the muscle fiber, the connective tissue, and even the nerves that carry the signal from your brain down to your legs. Low, constant, and quietly destructive. The third thing is that the plumbing narrows. Your leg muscles are fed by thousands of tiny blood vessels, and the signal that keeps those vessels open and relaxed fades with age. Less blood gets in, less oxygen, fewer nutrients, slower cleanup of waste. The muscle is still there, but it's being fed through a pinched hose. And the fourth thing is that the engines wear down. Every muscle cell is packed with tiny power plants called mitochondria. Think of them as thousands of little batteries. Age damages them, they hold less charge, and a leg running on weak batteries fatigues fast, recovers slowly, and shrinks a little more each year. Anabolic resistance, silent inflammation, narrowed plumbing, worn-out batteries. If you remember nothing else about the biology, remember those 4, because now every food I give you is going to click into place against one of them. This isn't a random grocery list. It's 4 repairs for 4 specific problems. So let's start with number 1, the one I'd want in your kitchen tonight. Number 1 is extra virgin olive oil. I know. Some of you were waiting for an exotic powder, some rare berry, something you'd have to order online. It's a green bottle you can buy at any grocery store in the country. And I also know that a lot of you spent 30 years being told to fear fat, to keep it low, keep it lean, scrape it off. So stay with me, because what the research on extra virgin olive oil and the aging muscle has found in the last few years genuinely reframes how you should think about fat after 60. Start with what makes it different from every other oil. Extra virgin olive oil is loaded with plant compounds called polyphenols, and 2 of them matter enormously here. The first is oleocanthal. Here's the remarkable part. Oleocanthal works on the same inflammation switches in your body that ibuprofen works on, the very same ones. It's part of why a good peppery olive oil catches slightly at the back of your throat. That little sting is the anti-inflammatory compound itself. So think back to the second problem, the slow fire. This is a food that reaches for the same dial a common anti-inflammatory drug reaches for, but without the stomach bleeding and kidney strain that come from taking those pills day after day, which matters enormously for older adults, who are the ones most likely to be living on them for sore joints and aching muscles. The second compound is hydroxytyrosol, and it goes to work on the fourth problem, the worn-out batteries. Your mitochondria carry their own tiny set of instructions, their own DNA, and as we age, those instructions get damaged, like a page photocopied so many times the letters go fuzzy. Hydroxytyrosol helps shield those instructions from the specific kind of damage that blurs them. Cleaner instructions, batteries that hold more charge, muscle that makes more of its own energy. And there's a third thing, the one researchers find most striking. Reviews pulling together the studies on olive oil and aging muscle. The work behind the Mediterranean diet research you've heard about for years. Point to olive oil's polyphenols nudging the muscle's actual growth switch. Scientists call that switch mTOR. It's the master control that tells a muscle cell to build. Protein flips it. Exercise flips it. And it looks like these olive oil compounds can help flip it too, which is a real gift when you remember problem. Number 1, the muscle that's gone hard of hearing. You're not just feeding it. You're helping turn the volume back up on the signal. Let me put a face on this, because the science only means something when it walks. I think of a man I'll call Walter, 78, a retired mail carrier outside Des Moines, a man who had walked for a living for 30 years and now couldn't make it from his back door to the mailbox without stopping. His diet, he told me proudly, was clean, very low fat, very lean. He'd been scraping fat off his plate since the 80s because that's what he'd been told to do. We didn't overhaul his life. We added a few tablespoons of a real, peppery, extra virgin olive oil a day, over his eggs in the morning, over his vegetables at night. That was the change we started with. It is never the whole answer by itself, and I'll be honest with you about that later. But months on, he was walking to the mailbox and back, and then around the block. The fat he'd been taught to fear was part of what his muscles had been starving for. So here's exactly how to use it, because the details change whether it works. Buy extra virgin. That word matters. It means the oil wasn't stripped of the very polyphenols we came for. Get it in a dark bottle, not clear glass, because light degrades it, and look for a harvest date on the label, not just a best by date. Fresh, peppery oil is the medicine. Old, flat oil off the bargain shelf is just fat. Use it as your everyday cooking fat over low to medium heat and drizzle it raw over vegetables, eggs, fish, and beans. A few tablespoons across the day. That's it. That's number 1. If that reframe alone was worth something to you, if nobody had ever told you the fat was part of the repair, then a quick thing. Subscribing tells me to keep making these, and it means the next one finds you. That's all. Now let's keep going, because number 1 works even better with what's coming next. Number 2 is eggs. You have heard the egg argument your entire adult life. They'll wreck your cholesterol, they'll clog your heart, put them down. And for a lot of older adults, that advice quietly did real harm, because eggs happen to carry one of the most useful muscle-building tools on the planet, and people threw it out. Remember problem number 1, the muscle that stopped answering the door? The knock that gets it to open up and build is an amino acid called leucine. Think of leucine as the key that turns the ignition on muscle repair, and eggs are one of the richest, most complete sources of it there is. But here's why it matters more as you age. Because of anabolic resistance, an older muscle needs a bigger dose of that key to start the same engine. You have to knock louder. How much louder? Researchers put the target at roughly 2.5 to 3 grams of leucine in a single meal to reliably get an older muscle building. And a couple of eggs on the plate gets you there more easily than almost anything else in your kitchen. Now stay with me, because this next part is the piece the original advice completely misses, and it's a whole strategy on its own. It is not just how much protein you eat in a day, it is when. Most older Americans eat almost no protein at breakfast. Toast, cereal, coffee, a little at lunch, and then a big pile of it at dinner. And it turns out an aging body can't bank protein. It can't take that giant dinner dose and spread it out. The muscle gets one strong building signal late in the day and nothing the rest of the time. The fix is almost annoyingly simple. Spread your protein across all 3 meals. Aim for a real serving. Very roughly 25 to 40 grams. At each one, starting with breakfast. 2 or 3 eggs in the morning is one of the easiest ways in the world to stop skipping that first signal. This one change, moving protein to breakfast, does more for an older person's muscle than almost any supplement I could name. And yes, eat the yolk. The yolk is where the vitamin D lives, where the choline lives, where the compounds that keep your muscle cell membranes intact live. Tossing the yolk to keep only the white is like paying full price for a flashlight and throwing the batteries in the trash. I think of a man I'll call Frank, 72, a retired plumber from Toledo, 2 falls in 1 year, terrified of his own basement stairs. He'd been eating a piece of dry toast for breakfast for a decade because it felt virtuous. We didn't do anything dramatic. 2 eggs in the morning, protein at every meal instead of all at night, olive oil on top. Within a couple of months, he told me he'd walked down to that basement without holding the rail for the first time in years. That's not magic. That's a muscle that finally got the signal at the right size at the right time of day. Number 3 is fatty fish, salmon, and I'm going to give you a cheaper version in a second, so don't tune out if salmon isn't in your budget. This one goes straight at problem number 2, the slow fire. Picture that background inflammation as a fire smoldering in your muscle, never ablaze, just a constant char year after year. The omega-3 fats in fatty fish, the ones labeled EPA and DHA, are the water bombing planes. They don't just cool the fire, they change the chemistry your body uses to keep it burning. For a muscle that's been slowly charring since your late 50s, that's a real intervention, and it arrives on a dinner plate. But fish does a second job, and almost nobody talks about it. It's one of the few foods that naturally carries vitamin D. And vitamin D is quietly central to leg strength. Your skin makes far less of it from sunlight as you age. Low vitamin D shows up over and over in older adults with weak muscles, poor balance, and a higher fall risk. Here's why that one is sneaky. You can eat well and still be running low. You'd never feel it directly. You'd just feel it in your legs. So here's the everyday version. 2 or 3 servings of fatty fish a week. And if fresh wild salmon is out of reach, it is for a lot of people. And pretending otherwise is how health advice loses touch with real life. Don't tune out. Canned salmon and canned sardines do the same job for a fraction of the price. Sardines especially are the best kept secret in that whole aisle. Omega-3s, vitamin D, and calcium. In a can that costs $1 or $2, cheaper than anything on the supplement shelf, and it actually works. Number 4 is leafy greens, spinach, kale, Swiss chard, arugula. This one goes after problem number 3, the narrowed plumbing. Your leg muscles live and die by blood flow, and the molecule that keeps those tiny vessels open and relaxed is called nitric oxide. You make less of it every year you age. The little vessels feeding your thighs and calves start to tighten. So what do you do about a signal that's fading? You eat it back. Dark leafy greens are packed with natural nitrates, and your body converts them right back into nitric oxide. That's food restoring the exact signal that aging turned down. More open vessels, more blood, more oxygen and fuel reaching the muscle, and faster cleanup of the waste that makes legs ache. Greens carry a second gift too, magnesium. A lot of older adults don't get nearly enough of it, and magnesium is what lets a muscle relax after it contracts. So here's a question. Do your calves seize up at night? Do your feet cramp and curl on their own in bed? That is very often a magnesium story. I think of a woman I'll call Carol, 69, a retired school teacher near Chattanooga, who described her legs as feeling like they were filled with wet concrete every morning, and whose calves cramped so hard at night they'd wake her. 2 cups of sautéed greens a day, cooked in. You guessed it, olive oil, which helps you absorb the good stuff. A few weeks later, the concrete feeling had lifted and the cramps had eased. Simple, cheap, and she'd been walking past it in the produce aisle for years. Now, one honest caution, because this is exactly where good advice has to get specific. If you take the blood thinner warfarin, the older one, sometimes called Coumadin, leafy greens are very high in vitamin K, and that interacts with how that particular drug works. It does not mean you can't eat greens. It means you keep your intake steady from week to week instead of swinging wildly, and you tell the doctor who manages your blood thinner that you're adding them. If that's you, that's a 2-minute conversation, not a reason to skip this. Number 5 is beets, and I'll admit this one always gets a skeptical look. Beets go after that same plumbing problem as greens, but they hit it harder, much harder. Gram for gram, beets carry several times the natural nitrate of any leafy green. So picture a leg working to climb the stairs, muscle running low on oxygen. That's exactly where the nitrate goes to work. Your body converts it into nitric oxide right where it's needed, and the vessels open in a wave. And here's the part that surprised me. Researchers at Wake Forest University found that in older adults, beetroot could increase blood flow up into the brain, into the regions that help control movement. Sit with that for a second. This isn't only about the legs. It's about the connection between the brain and the legs, the coordination and steadiness that keeps you from going down in the first place. Beets carry one more tool, a compound called betaine, which helps your body clear out a substance called homocysteine. When homocysteine runs high, and it climbs with age, it's tied to more muscle loss and more blood vessel damage. Betaine helps keep that chemistry cleaner, which protects the very batteries and vessels we've been talking about this whole time. Roast them whole to concentrate the good stuff, or drop raw beets into a blender with a squeeze of orange or lemon. The vitamin C helps the conversion along. Don't boil them for an hour. The nitrates leach out into the water. And one more specific note, because I promised you real advice. Beets, greens, and beans are all high in potassium, which is wonderful for most people's blood pressure. But if you have advanced kidney disease or you're on certain potassium-sparing medications, potassium is something your doctor may be watching closely. If that's your situation, bring it up before you load your plate. For most of you, it's a benefit. For a few of you, it's a conversation. Knowing which one you are is exactly the point. Number 6 is Greek yogurt, and this one is underrated as a muscle food. A cup of plain, full-fat Greek yogurt carries a serious dose of high-quality protein. The complete kind, with the leucine key we talked about, in a form your body grabs fast. That alone earns its place. But there's a second reason, and it's one of the more surprising findings in recent nutrition. Your gut and your muscle are in constant conversation. Think about that. The trillions of bacteria in your digestive tract help decide how much of the protein you eat actually reaches your muscles. And as we age, that inner ecosystem gets thinner, like a library slowly losing its books. Live culture foods like real Greek yogurt help restock the shelves. The fuller the library, the more of every good thing on this list your body can actually use. Have it with a little fruit, keep it plain so you're not spooning in added sugar, and it makes an easy protein-rich breakfast or snack. Another chance to hit that morning signal. Number 7, and this is the one I'd add if money is tight, lentils and beans. Here's a food that quietly does 3 jobs at once. First, plant protein. Not quite as muscle-ready as eggs or fish on its own, but real, and it stacks up fast across a day. Second, potassium, which is one of the best tools you have for keeping blood pressure in a healthy range, and blood pressure is part of that whole plumbing story. Third, fiber, which steadies your blood sugar, and steady blood sugar protects muscle over the long run. A pot of lentils costs almost nothing, keeps for days, and works for the millions of people for whom just buy wild salmon was never a realistic answer. Beans belong in this conversation precisely because they're humble. And 2 quick honorable mentions, because they're easy to add and they punch above their weight. Pumpkin seeds, a small handful, are one of the richest everyday sources of magnesium and zinc, both of which your muscles lean on for contraction and repair with a little protein besides. Keep a jar on the counter and they quietly solve the afternoon snack. And berries, blueberries especially, carry the same family of protective plant compounds we praised in olive oil, the kind that help shield those tiny cellular batteries from wear. A handful of berries in your morning yogurt serves 2 items on this list at once. Neither one is a headline food, Both are exactly the kind of small, repeatable choice that, done for years, bends the whole curve. Now, I want to stop and do something with all of this, because a list you can't measure is a list you'll forget. So here's that 10-second test I promised you, and I want you to actually try it. If you're able to stand safely, do it with me. If you're at all unsteady, keep a hand near a counter, or just watch this time and try later with someone nearby. Find a sturdy chair, the kind that won't slide. Sit down, feet flat, and cross your arms over your chest so you can't cheat by pushing off. Now stand all the way up and sit all the way back down, over and over, and count how many full stands you can do in 30 seconds. This isn't something I made up. It's a version of a test called the chair stand test that we actually use to check lower body strength and fall risk. Count your number, then write it down somewhere you'll find it again. Today's date and your number. Here's the important part, and it's very much in the spirit of everything I believe about this. I'm not going to hand you a single pass-fail number to panic over. Bodies differ. What matters far more than today's score is the direction it moves. You are not chasing a perfect number. You're establishing your baseline, where your legs stand today, so that in 8 weeks, after you've been feeding the muscle, you can sit in that same chair and find out whether your number went up. And it very often does. That rising number is the most honest feedback loop in all of this. The scale lies to you. The mirror lies to you. The chair does not. Now, I have to be honest with you about something, because I'd rather build your trust than sell you an easy story. Food alone is not the whole answer. I hinted at that with Walter, and here it is plainly. You can eat every item on this list perfectly and still lose ground if the muscle never gets asked to do anything. Protein and polyphenols are the raw materials, but a muscle only rebuilds when it has a reason to. And the reason is a little bit of load. I don't mean a gym. I mean standing up from that chair a few extra times a day. I mean carrying your own groceries instead of having them carried. I mean taking the stairs you've been avoiding, one flight, holding the rail. The food is the bricks. Gentle, regular use is the bricklayer. Neither one builds the wall alone. Put the two together. Real protein at breakfast, olive oil on the plate, greens and fish across the week, and a few honest efforts to use your legs each day. And that's when the chair test number climbs. And since I keep pointing you away from the supplement shelf, let me answer the question I get most, because you're going to ask it anyway. Can't I just take a protein powder or collagen or one of those muscle pills and skip the cooking? Here's my honest answer. Whole food comes first, every time, and you've seen why. It isn't only the protein. It's the vitamin D riding along in the egg yolk, the omega-3s in the fish, the polyphenols in the oil, the potassium in the beans, all arriving together the way your body expects them. A powder hands you one instrument. The plate hands you the whole orchestra. That said, a plain protein powder can be a fair helper if you truly can't hit that protein target at breakfast. It's a tool, not a villain. And there is one supplement with real, repeated evidence behind it for older adult strength, creatine, especially paired with that little bit of daily load. It's cheap, it's well-studied, and it's worth a short conversation with your doctor. But notice the order. Food and use first, a helper second. Never a shortcut that lets you skip the meal. One more connection worth making, because these problems travel together. If you have diabetes or prediabetes, all of this matters to you double. High blood sugar speeds up muscle loss and damages the very nerves and vessels that feed your legs, so every food here is quietly doing a second job for you. And if you're on blood pressure medication, the potassium in the greens, beets, and beans is pushing in the same direction as your pills. Usually helpful, occasionally something to keep an eye on with your doctor. Your legs, your heart, and your blood sugar are not 3 separate projects. Underneath, they're one. I know what some of you are thinking, because I've heard it 100 times. You're thinking you've heard eat well and move more your whole life. Fair. But that's not what I said. I gave you 4 specific problems and matched a specific food to each one, told you the exact wrong time of day most people eat their protein, and handed you a way to measure the result in your own kitchen. That's not eat well. That's a plan. And here's the reassurance, because I never want to leave you sitting in worry. If your chair number was low today, that is not a verdict. It's a starting line. Muscle keeps its ability to rebuild deep into old age. People in their 80s and 90s build strength when they finally give the muscle what it needs. The body wants to rebuild. Most of the time, it's just been waiting for the raw materials and a reason. But, and this matters, I need to draw one clear line, because not all leg weakness is the slow, feed me kind we've been fixing. A few kinds are not about food at all, and confusing them could cost you. So write these down. If weakness comes on suddenly in one leg, especially if it shows up with a drooping face, a weak arm, or slurred speech, that is not nutrition. That is a possible stroke, and it is a call 911 emergency right now. Don't wait to see if it passes. Don't drive yourself. An ambulance starts care on the way and gets you seen faster. Every minute counts. If one calf becomes painful, swollen, warm, and red, fairly suddenly, that can be a blood clot in the deep veins of the leg. That is not a walk-it-off situation, and it is not a wait for my next appointment situation. That's a same-day problem, because a clot can travel to the lungs, urgent care, or the emergency room today. And if you have a fall where you hit your head, couldn't get yourself up, or can't put weight on a leg afterward, get seen. A head hit especially matters if you take a blood thinner. Not being able to bear weight can mean a fracture. For everything short of those, the gradual heaviness, the slow decline, the legs that just feel older than you are, here's the ladder. Notice it and write it down. When it happens, what you were doing. Bring it up at your next visit if it's mild and steady. Call your primary care doctor and get seen this week if it's new, or getting worse, or you've had a fall. And please, tell your doctor if you've fallen, even once, even if you felt silly. Remember, fewer than half of people do, and that silence is exactly how the next fall sneaks up. Being checked and sent home is a good outcome. That is not wasting anyone's time. While we're talking about your doctor, one of the highest value, lowest cost things you can do is sitting there unused for most people. If you're on Medicare, your annual wellness visit costs you nothing, no copay, and most people never book it. When you go, bring your chair test number, ask them to check your vitamin D level, and ask them to actually assess your leg strength and your fall risk. Ask which screenings are covered before you go, so there's no surprise bill. That one appointment, used well, is worth more than any bottle on the supplement shelf. Let me bring this all together, because I want you to be able to carry it out of here in one piece. Your legs are fighting 4 quiet battles as you age. The muscle stops listening, so knock louder, with real protein at every meal, starting at breakfast, eggs and yogurt and beans leading the way. A slow fire burns in the background, so cool it with olive oil and fatty fish or a humble can of sardines. The plumbing narrows, so open it back up with leafy greens and beets, and the batteries wear down. So protect them, again with the polyphenols in that green bottle. 4 problems, matched foods, 1 plan. Add a little honest use of your legs each day and measure the result in a chair. If you remember only 1 sentence from the last half hour, make it this one. When your legs feel older than you are, don't assume it's just age. Feed the muscle, give it a reason to work, and then measure whether it comes back. Because it usually does. So here's what I'd do in the next 24 hours, and it's small on purpose. Do the chair stand test today and write down your number and the date. Tomorrow morning, put 2 or 3 eggs where the toast used to be with a little olive oil. 1 meal, 1 change. This week, pick just 1 more food from this list and get it in the house. Not all 7. 1. You're looking for the pattern, not for perfection. Then set a reminder for 8 weeks from now to sit in that same chair and count again. This is the part I most want you to believe, because I've watched it be true. You were not built to become a spectator in your own life, to hold the railing on your own stairs, to hand your grocery bags to someone else, to sit out the walk with the grandkids because you're afraid your legs won't hold. That fear is real, but a large part of what feeds it is information nobody handed you until now. Staying in your own home, driving yourself, climbing your own stairs, not becoming a burden on your kids. That's not luck, and it's not simply your age. A real part of it is being built at your next meal. If this gave you a plan you didn't have this morning, share it with someone whose legs you worry about. A parent, a partner, a friend who's been gripping that railing. And tell me your chair number down in the comments and which food you're starting with. I read them. Until next time, eat like your legs depend on it, because they do, and I'll see you soon.